Hey everybody, my name's Alex and this is Bento Radio. Now, before we get into it, I just wanted to thank everybody who watched my episode on Gachakuda. If you haven't seen my episode of Gachakuda, which is highly unlikely because a whole lot more people watched the episode than normal, you can go check that out in the YouTube feed. If you're not watching on YouTube, I actually encourage you to watch on YouTube, especially for this episode and some stuff I have planned coming up, because it'll be a lot more visual, a lot more made for YouTube. You'll still be able to listen to it on any of the podcast platforms that you're listening on right now, but I've got some stuff planned that's explicitly visual for YouTube, and I'm going to put it both places just for my own sanity. But definitely go check out the YouTube channel if you haven't. If you have and you're watching this, A, thank you, but B, look forward to some stuff I've got in my head for doing for this new year. By the way, Happy New Year's. And if you can't get enough of what I'm doing, you can always go check out the website, which is bento-box.ghost.io. I know it's complicated, but such a life. But that is the long and short of it. You can also go check me out on Blue Sky. I'm over there vanishingly less, but occasionally brain still goes burr and wants to make a tweet and Twitter the hellscape, so Blue Sky was the place I went. I'm less so actually on Threads. Threads gets posted there because it gets posted from Instagram, and I post to Instagram, and it posts to Threads. But definitely to all the places to go find me. But that one, once again, is bento-box.ghost.io, and at the bottom you'll find all the places to find me in the footer of that site. So definitely go check that out. And on that note, we're going to jump into what we're doing this week, which is a little bit different than most, because it is the beginning of the season, and if you've been watching the show or listening to the show for a while, you know that at the beginning of the season I try and do a kind of the stuff I'm looking at for that season. If I look down like this, it's because I'm looking at literally at a list of shows that I want to talk about that are coming for this current 2026 winter season. So on that note, let's jump right into it. So for the first show I want to talk about, and we're going to be talking about a total of 5 shows, and spoiler alert, most of them except for one actually will be returning shows, and that's a pretty good thing, because if anyone remembers when Attack on Titan originally blew up, they didn't have the mindset to be able to capitalize on it. So what I get from this season happening now is that a lot more studios are looking at continuing the things they've been doing much more quickly than something like Attack on Titan. Hilariously, Attack on Titan came out, it was a massive hit, and then nothing for years. And in between, they actually made Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which, if you've seen that show, is a lot like Attack on Titan, but with zombies and trains. So much so that lots of people called it Attack on Trains. I've that a lot. Maybe it was just me, but lots of people called it Attack on Trains, which I found because it's by the same studio that did the first season of Attack on Titan. It's also by all the same actual people, I believe. And it's a great show, but it's not the big thing everybody was hoping for. So everybody was like, what's happening? And it took a lot of old heads like me being like, well, complicated schedules are a thing. So what you gonna do? So it's nice when we get a lot of follow-ups from a lot of shows bunched together really conveniently, and it makes for you get to know is a pretty banger season. And this is a pretty banger season because there's actually going to be a pretty banger year, because there's a lot of shows coming back, and all the planets aligned to make it so, kind of another, the hits never stop coming back. which and don't get me wrong, the last show on my list here is going to be a show is just an original show. It's not an original show, but it's an original adaptation of a light novel. And I've talked about that show before, actually, in my coverage of Anime NYC the last year, and which I go buy tickets for. By the way, if you're watching this, day and date, Anime NYC tickets go on sale on the 16th of January. So know that. Just know, I don't time they're busted open the gates, but I think it's like 7 o'clock. But it's what they do, and we all gotta get on a digital line, and it's dumb. But know that's happening on the 16th of January. So, go to, maybe one time they'll open press tickets and approval sooner than badge reservations happen. Because while I'm on YouTube and when I do a podcast, I am from the old school world of when they still had press badges, of when they didn't have not badges, but they didn't have influencer badges for a while there. They only had press badges, and I've applied through the press program there, and I cover it like press. I don't cover it like an influencer. I have no interest in kind of the holding and like look at the pretty coloredness of being an influencer. And having been in both rooms, I seem like a press person, not an influencer. I know there's a lot of bleed there, but the way I handle interviews, coverage, and all that stuff, and if you haven't seen that stuff, you can go over to, I'm plugging this for time now, you can go over to bento-box.ghost.io and see all of my coverage of the last Anime NYC, including a extremely great interview I did with the 2 of the 3 directors of New Panty and Stocking. You can see that over there. And you'll see, like, this isn't, like, sensationalist influencers. It's, like, sinky old head otaku stuff about going to conventions, which is really what I want to do and what I want to give you, because I think that gives a better, more accurate of what it is to go to that convention, because I think that conventions are still important, but they're also very different and much more bombastic. So, like, covering them in the way that I do, I think, gives you a more ground-level look at it. But, anyway, regardless, the 16th, probably around 7 o'clock, Anime NYC tickets go on sale. I've done my good deed for the world, I guess. But, on that note, we've got a whole bunch of new seasons of old stuff. So, the first show I want to talk about is, I'm looking at the things here, and I'm remembering. Oh, the first show I want to talk about is actually, My Hero Vigilantes, which didn't really go away for that long. I think it was, like, at least doesn't register me as having gone away for that long, which is really cool and interesting. And this is one of those where it's not doesn't explicitly say, like, season 2, not listed as season 2, they're just keeping it going. It's just, we got a new opening, we got a new ending, and we are continuing the story. And the thing, so this is going to be like I've usually done it before. The way I want to kind of do this, I want to pose these shows as, if you like this kind of thing, you should go, and you haven't watched the first season of these, or in the case of one, you're looking for a new thing, you should watch the first season. This is worth catching up on, and you should dive into the second season. Or in this case, you should watch the first 13 and then dive into the 14s. If you like the idea of My Hero Academia, but it doesn't seem like it's close enough to the bone. For that, I mean, it's like it's dealing with, like, throughout My Hero Academia, you're watching a story where the world has been started and then advanced a little bit. Does that make any sense? So, like, in My Hero Academia, the idea is that, like, years before Izuku Midoriya, the main character, was born, people started showing up in the world with superpowers. And the world that you're inhabiting when you follow Izuku's story is a world that has completely been reworked around the idea that, like, sometimes you can have a kid who can, like, stretch like from the Fantastic Four. Sometimes you can have a kid who can breathe fire. Sometimes you're going to have a kid who just has tape in his elbows. Sometimes you're going to have a kid who shoots a laser from his belly button, but it makes him get a real bad tummy ache. Like, these are all real powers, by the way, in the My Hero Academia universe. Sometimes you can have a kid with a speaker in his neck. Like, the ramifications of living in a society where, and specifically, it's interesting, a Japanese society where everyone is so specific and individualized, have already been largely not dealt with, because they touch on the fact that it's not particularly well dealt with in My Hero, but have been being dealt with for a long enough time where you're not seeing the initial throes. And what I mean there is you're not seeing, like, the fact, like, you know, suddenly became much more individualistic, like, in short, very quickly, in a way that it wasn't, especially in Japan. And if you want more of those questions, if you want, once again, it to be closer to the bone, I would definitely check out Vigilantes, because Vigilantes is a prequel series to the main My Hero series, and also because it's a spin-off and because it's a prequel, it gets to be a lot less high schooler focused. They explicitly make the main, I forget his name, who's it's a crawler, but they explicitly make the main character in college. You know, many characters are less childlike in some ways than they are in My Hero Academia. It's not pretense of the school setting, almost exclusively. It's like can't get from the like school setting of My Hero Academia fast enough. It had no interest in it, which is a much more adult feel than something like set in the school like My Hero Academia, which is explicitly about like what if it was awesome kind of thing. So if you like the sound of that, definitely go check that out. And once again, it's My Hero Academia Vigilantes, technically season 2, but it in Crunchyroll parlance, it just rolls into episode 14. So you'll know when you hit it if you are catching up. If you're not catching up, welcome back. My Hero Vigilantes came back like last Monday. And on that, let's jump into the next thing I want to talk about. Once again, if I'm looking down that way, it's because I've got my phone propped with the things I want to talk about on it. And that is the season 2 and return of a show that I thought one of the more beautiful shows that premiered in its season, and that is a show, Hell's Paradise. And Hell's Paradise is interesting for me because I'm almost in like a criminal storyline period, because a lot of what people perceive as criminality is just life and just existing. And we're set up for you to not be able to do that properly. So you gotta make some compromises, and they go against artificial rules and all this other stuff, and that is especially true in something like ancient Japan or any kind of medieval time period, because the rules are explicitly punishments against people with less money than the people making the rules very often. But just the mystery of this fantastical island, the otherworldly horror aspect of it, the beauty of the production and of the concept of being overwhelmed flowers, it's really an interesting and mysterious and more than a little terrifying. And I've never been and if any of that sounds interesting to you, you should check out the first season. The first season has a awesome opening. It's very good. It's worth into. And the second season looks really incredible. But the thing is that it has a surprisingly endearing cast, and like they make thing where like you can tell that the character who the cast will be throughout the show. You can tell who's gonna die pretty quickly and who's not. But they do a really good job of it, and it's an interesting concept and setting and story. So I've been looking forward to the second season of it since I finished the first season. But yeah, any of that sounds interesting, you definitely go check that out. Or if you haven't watched it, catch up on it. Once again, I think it's like a 24 thing. Like it's for you to catch up before it actually goes live. And then the next one is kind of the middle of. I'm doing this in most kind of nice, and I like it, but the last one will be the one I'm most excited for, and the last one is actually the only original adaptation this season on the list so far. I'm sure I'll watch more, but this is the one that like I saw on Anime NYC and on a big screen. It blew my socks off, so I absolutely wanted to watch it when it came out in its season. Which I think we even got what season it was going to come out in that screening, so that's really interesting. But the next thing I want to talk about is JJK. I kept up with the manga to a point with JJK. We are past that point now. I kind of have in reading the manga, I like vaguely know what the deal is going through it, but because it was a little unavoidable there for a second, especially when the manga was still going, especially after the manga ended, because people were deeply dissatisfied with that manga ending, I believe. But I like the idea of like, what if all your work qualities became superpowers? And if you like that idea, you should probably check out Jujutsu Kaisen. And I want to pause here and talk about just like horror tropes in anime, and especially mainstream anime, because we now have two of what were considered to be the dark trio of, I believe it was Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Hell's Paradise returning in the same breath. And we just got the back release of Red Day Arc movie in theaters. Part of what makes horror movies so cheap to produce is the core emotion, that fear that they're built around. It's really compelling. But if you do that right and you use the kind of horror effectively, you can make something really cool in addition to other things in that thing. And what you're seeing in both in this current anime season, both Hell's Paradise and Jujutsu Kaisen, is you're seeing really cool stuff be mixed with the horror genre to give you something that isn't explicitly a horror thing, but is horror tinged in a way where if you... So, the thing I would give you for both Hell's Paradise and now Jujutsu Kaisen is, if you like the idea of watching horror but can't stomach it. I've never been able to watch horror because I have an imagination that will wield that imagery and that stuff against me for weeks at a time if I put it in my brain. So much the last horror movie I watched was, I think, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. And I could take that because it was so ridiculous. It was so schlocky and insane. In its time, The Birds was terrifying, but I couldn't straight up in that moment. But Jujutsu takes those elements and kind of drops out from them and lets you stare at them without being as initially horrified. And you can kind of internalize, think about it, and there's not a quality to it. So if you, once again, like the idea of horror tropes, but you don't like actual horror things, give Jujutsu Kaisen a look. Once again, it's what if all of your worst traits were superpowers, is the way I always think about it. And I like seeing what they do with the, I think the Sorcerer Selection arc, or whatever it is. but it's going to be some sort of convoluted, insane tournament arc, which I'm looking forward to because I love a tournament arc, just like every other fan of any shonen thing. So I've been looking forward to that. And then the next thing is almost in the complete opposite direction, and that is probably the only thing on this list that I have gone out of my way to prep for, to actually dive into the first season of again and rewatch in its entirety, and that's Frieren. Because I love, like a lot of people, I love Frieren. It's such, and if you haven't watched Frieren yet, I think you should. I think it'll give you something that not a whole lot of other things that have hit its kind of popularity do. And that is a unique perspective on a genre and a unique perspective on relationships and the intensity of relationships and love and friendship and all that stuff over long periods. And it does it in a way without being, with absolutely being sappy. Like, the show makes you cry at points easily. It always makes me cry at points, and I've watched it multiple times now. But it will do it without making it an explicit romance territory. I mean, in its use of Stark, it has like a current and date romance, but the romance that you're largely exploring in the first season, at least, is between Frieren and Himmel, and like a romance never got to be a romance that never quite was. And the cool part there is that it's the whole show is about exploring relationships without it needing to explicitly focus on a singular one in the way that lots of rom-coms or romances or that ilk do usually. And it's a really, really interesting and like beautifully made and conceptualized thing. And I always say like that's why it's in the second most anticipated slot, because if the last show I'm talking about wasn't here, this would be my most anticipated show of this season. So without further ado, let's jump into what we're talking about last, and that is the thing that, like I said, my socks off at Anime NYC. And I said to another person in the press pool when we kind of like to the press room for the morning, I was like, we were just talking about how this was going for each of us, and I brought up that I went to the screenings, and I said, like, oh, I was screening and I saw the show, and it was like is easily the best thing out of all the screenings. And he's like, I heard, and he's like, I picked up the light novel from, I think it was he that puts out the light novel, but he was like, I picked up that light novel from Seven Seas yesterday. I'm like really curious, like, this is what they made, and oh yeah, boy, that is Sentenced to be a Hero. So if I pitch this in a way that hadn't already been pitched, if you like fantasy shows, if you like odd fantasy shows, if you like the idea of taking a simple, well-worn concept and really going for it, I would encourage. Or if you're a fan of like just, and I will admit to being this way, I really like it when I watch a show and it's clear that they just threw money, time, and resources at a thing. That they're just like, here are all the best people, go. Like, really unfortunate about, the main thing about One Punch Man is that the first season of that is incredible. Every season afterwards has a cash grab. It's been so bad. And if I had to guess that the anime industry learned something from that, it's that you can't intentionally knock it out of the park. And maybe they haven't, because Blue Lock Season 2, from what I understand, is a nightmare thing. But you can't knock it out of the park and then not plan to do that at that level again. This show is intentionally knocking out of the park. It's It's directed by the animation director behind Mushoku Tensei, which, if you know anything about the, machine that was created to make Mushoku Tensei, that thing has and will help produce incredible work. I know I beat Death of the Universe. Studio, I think it is. Find. And I thought this in when I was talking about, not just Tensei, but also, the Rock. Studio Bind was kind of made the perfect machine for making Mushoku Tensei, for making Jobless Reincarnation. And, the stuff made outside of that are just side projects. But because they put together this thing to make something that explicitly, the highest in animation they could make whenever it comes out, they just got people who are, determined to make the best thing they can make. They're not interested in making kind of the standard, looks like everything else, has the same, sheen and level as everything else stuff you can make. And in the actual product, what the first double-length hour of Sentence to be a Hero is, you can see that, they're not interested in making something that looks or feels like everything else in anime right now. And to me, more than all the other stuff, that's really interesting to me. Like I said, if it wasn't here, Frieren would be my most anticipated show. But if you look at Frieren is kind of at the top level of anime right now, without tipping over into being much more experimental and interesting and all that stuff. Frieren has great character designs, it has great pacing and all the, stuff that you imagine in a current, modern-day, premiere, beautifully produced thing. But Sentence to be a Hero is going after something different. It's going after the kind of swords fantasy-ness of years past. You're watching the best version of stuff that was produced in the 90s. If that makes any sense. And if that interests you, I really encourage anybody watching this right now to go watch the hour-long double-length premiere episode for Sentence to be a Hero. It's over on Crunchyroll. There's kind of something for everyone, and I hear a lot of people worried about the goddess character and the way they treat the goddess character. But that's going to be part of the package, my guy. The ingenious about a lot of really good anime is that they're not for everybody. They are of the craft, exploring it in all of its awesome and messy bullshit included. And the thing that feels incredible about Sentence to be a Hero is that it's for being no, this is some anime bullshit, but it's awesome. In that way that something like Lagan is, in the same way that, that Studio Gainax stuff is before Studio Gainax went its own nightmare way. And this feels like that. Mushoku Tensei feels like that. Frieren feels like that. All kind of this season, and that's definitely it. But all this season they have this feel that anime hasn't had for a while, and that is that it's reclaiming it from kind of mass a little bit. If that makes any sense, because it's fitting that the same set of screenings that I saw the first episode for Sentence to be a Hero, I saw a adaptation of, and I did a double take. I was like, that's a 90s ass, messy as hell, situational rom-com reverse harem thing from the 90s. But the tendency to want to make stuff that is very mass market for anime. And part of that is because I saw a thing on TikTok that was saying, I'm trying to get through Gurren Lagann, but I can't. I've been thinking about this for a while, but somebody said, I'm trying to get through Gurren Lagann, but I can't get past Yoko's character design. And the thing, like I said with just a couple minutes ago, something being good and for everyone is almost not possible. Like, truly, because they have opinion, because they have a point of view, because they're not afraid for that. The thing that's awesome about Sentence to Be a Hero, it has, yes, it's like Philo and Shorty, but it's opinion, and it has, like, it kind of like, we're all otaku here, let's do it, hell yeah-ness that you get from something like Gurren Lagann, that it has of the shows that paved the way for modern anime to be so incredibly popular. And part of the reason why so many, hardcore, old school fans are really into the show is because it's that way. And like, we see it and we're like, oh, this is take us for a ride. In the same way that, actually, that G-Clax kind of celebrated Gundam as a whole for its entire 13 episodes, for its entire, however long it was. This show feels like a return to form from, like this whole selections I have from the season, they feel like return to forms that are less trying to mask the otaku-ness and the anime-ness of what's going on. The anime Otakus Anonymous guys, who are incredibly popular. We're talking about the first new episode of Vigilantes this week. They were talking about Vigilantes in general, and they said like it feels more adult and less tiptoeing around its faults than My Hero. And the thing is like, yeah, Vigilantes more like what anime always feels like. It doesn't feel like it's gotten caught up in the massive amount of popularity that the main thing has had to contend with. And also it feels less like because it's a spin-off, it feels less like it needs to follow the Shonen Jump formula arc. And I think the thing that's true of everything that I've talked about this exception of Jujutsu Kaisen, it's that they're all shows that get to break out of that. They get to be much less populous and mass appeal. Without exception, are no less good because of it. Are oftentimes more good because they aren't concerned with it. The Hell's Paradise, it makes it more interesting, not less. The kind of wholesale window of the, like, we're off feet, the demon lordness of Frieren is what makes it's the first part of what makes that show as a concept.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you did, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. If you're listening to it on a podcast platform and they allow you to give a 5-star review, be sure to do that. If you're watching this on YouTube and you really liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the video. In addition, if you want to make sure that you don't miss a beat, be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when new episodes drop. But if you're wondering, they drop every Thursday night Eastern time. And on that note, if you really love the podcast and you really love what I'm trying to do here, be sure to give the website a look. That website is bento-box.ghost.io. There will be a link in the description of either this podcast or this video. It'll also be linked in the description of the entire podcast on the information page. It'll also be linked in the description of the YouTube channel. So there's plenty of ways for you to get to that website and check it out. If you want to follow me, my social links are also listed in the footer of that page. So once again, go over there to find that stuff. But I hope you like the episode. I look forward to talking to you next time. But until next time, I have been Alex. This has been Bento Radio, and I'll talk at you later.